Welcome to Building Bridges of Hope. My name is Daddy Chitalu. Now, did you know that the population of the world is about 8 billion? And of these 8 billion, do you know that about 3 billion have not yet heard about the gospel of Jesus Christ? And 97% of this 3 billion live between the 10 and 40 window north latitude. And so we have gospel outreach that has been trying to evangelize in this 10-40 window. On Building Bridges of Hope, my guest is coming all the way from gospel outreach. His name is Pastor Daniel Neisner. Pastor Daniel, welcome to this program.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here. I appreciate the chance to share with you what we're doing at Gospel Outreach and how we are seeing God at work in what we do. So thank you so much.
Pastor Daniel, allow me first of all to ask you these questions. How did you meet the Lord Jesus Christ?
Oh my. I grew up in a family, we went to church all the time, but later on my family kind of walked away from the church and the Lord, and I was kind of on my own, but I realized life is better with Jesus. It just is. And I did not want to be without him. I didn't want to turn my back on Jesus. So I stayed tight with the Lord. I continued to draw closer, and I studied and have had many opportunities to share with people around the world how Jesus has worked and how he continues to work in our lives.
Tell me about your personal experience in your work.
Oh my. I worked as a pastor for many years, and we were missionaries as a family. We went to Hong Kong, where I was chaplain at a hospital there, and also worked in the health promotion side of things at the hospital. I've pastored in California and in Washington State, in the eastern part of Washington State, and had many opportunities to interact with people and see people's lives changed as a result of what God is doing and how he works.
Thank you so much, and we come back to gospel outreach. What is gospel outreach? What is your mission?
Gospel Outreach is a NGO in America. It was started over 30 years ago, and they started out, there was one man that traveled to his second marriage. His first wife had passed away, and he married a lady, and she was from the Philippines. And one thing you find out about many people is they like to go back to their homeland to meet their family often. And Filipino ladies just love going back to see their family. And so he went back with her many times. And one time he was back there standing outside of a Christian university. And as he saw the young people from the university streaming out of the chapel one day, he said it was like he heard a voice saying, what would happen if these people were empowered to share Jesus with their friends and neighbors? They know the language, they know the customs, they know everything about it. And so he thought that, but at the same time a thought came to him, how could we ever pay, how could we ever raise that much money? And it was like the Lord spoke to him, that's not your problem. You don't have to worry about that. And it was slow, he wasn't responding really quickly, but pretty soon he started raising money at church and different places. And when he would travel to the Philippines, he would bring money for workers that he had asked to work in various places. And within the first year, he had, I think, 12 people he was supporting in the Philippines there. And in a very few years, he had people in many parts of Southeast Asia especially, where he was supporting local Bible workers in their villages.
Within a short time, he had over 12 people working for him. Roughly share with us, in how many countries are you operating? If not, what would be just a rough estimate of the number of gospel workers worldwide, the ones that you're supporting?
Yes, Gospel Outreach supports workers in the local field. A huge amount of the money people send to us, we use to support stipends for our workers in the field. Currently, Gospel Outreach is operating in over 50 countries, And we have many, many church organizations that are helping us with that. And in those 50 countries, we have altogether somewhat over 2,000 gospel outreach workers that are being supported and making a difference around the world. Our largest group is in India, but we have many groups in various places in the world where people are working, especially in the 1040 window, just people introducing people to Jesus.
Thank you so much. So many things have been raised. We will follow them step by step. Dear viewer, in case you have just joined us, on Building Bridges of Hope, we have featured Pastor Daniel Neisner. And he shares with us his journey or the role of the gospel worker. Pastor, share with us slowly the process the process you go through for you to identify a community's spiritual needs, or for you to identify an area of your interest.
We are looking for places where mission organizations and church organizations perhaps are willing to work with us to put a worker in an area where there's that hasn't been really reached for Christ. And so we partner with organizations, local church organizations, that take care of identifying the locations where the workers are going to be, and then they supervise the worker in the field. We in America don't understand what's going on in each individual place where they're working, but we expect the local organization to find the best place where they can work and how they can be most effective for Jesus. And then we work with them to help support them financially with a stipend, and also to provide some ongoing training and education and supervision. And so my role, I'm what they call a regional director, and I'm covering this part of Africa and the workers in this part of the field. And my role is to come and to check on them. Ideally, it would be once a year. There's been quite a break since anyone has been here. And so I'm trying to pull things together to get new work started and to shore up old relationships so we can continue having strong work in this part of the world.
Thank you so much. As a regional director, I see that you have administrative roles, planning, strategizing. But allow me to take you a bit slowly and ask a personal question. Have you ever met a person, say you meet a person who disagrees with you as you try to speak with them due to theological differences and disagreements? How do you handle such a person?
Oh, I love people being honest with me. I find when Jesus was here, he didn't worry about what people thought theologically. He always tried to cut through to the bottom line. And the bottom line is truth. Jesus deals with truth. And you remember the woman at the well. She came to Jesus and she had all kinds of theological questions and all kinds of important things. But as soon as she started admitting where she was and where she was hurting and where her needs were, then he communicated with her in a real way. And Jesus was honest with her. So when I meet people that I disagree with or we may not see eye to eye, God leads us all different directions from different paths. And he leads us in different ways. And he leads us into truth in different ways. And I'm always excited to see somebody, another seeker after truth, that's looking for more truth and is open for what the Lord has in mind.
Thank you. I'll still bring you later to the issue of strategies and what you go through. At one point you were in Myanmar, and it was in Thailand. Share with me, did you have to adapt? How do you adapt to environments that are different from yours in your work as a gospel worker and as an administrator?
Sure. For me, my time here in Zambia, this is I think my 8th country that I've visited since I've come to Africa. And I got here in January, and we're now at the end of March, and so I've been here close to 3 months now. Mm-hmm. And so there's adjustments in the food and in the environment, but that all is easy. And
The 8 countries, where are they from? In Africa, I just mentioned. some
oh,
of
I
them.
started in West Africa.
West Africa.
Yeah, do you want the countries?
No, no, no.
Okay.
Now I'm talking about adaptability. How do you
Adaptability.
adapt to such an environment?
Yeah.
West Africa,
in
East
West
Africa,
Africa,
now Central Africa.
yeah. Every place is similar. The needs are similar. The countries are similar, but there's individual things, and I guess the bottom line for me is I try not to be too rigid in my expectations, or I try to listen to the Lord and what He has in mind. And one of my biggest frustrations on this trip, I was in Uganda and Rwanda and Burundi trying to get into the Democratic Republic of Congo. And there's been some uprising there, some rebel activity, and it made things a little difficult, but it sounded like it was still safe to get into. But in the end, because I hadn't followed through on what I needed to do to get a visa, I wasn't able to enter there. So I had to change my plans a little bit. And I guess for me, I just have to be flexible, and I apologize to the people that I inconvenienced there, and just do the best I can to make the best of it, and I will plan better next time. And I'm learning so much on this trip. Next time when I come, I will be so much better prepared, and things will go so much smoother, I hope. So.
Thank you so much. We come to strategies, and as a regional director and administrative works, what is your main focus as gospel outreach?
As a regional director for a region, this region of Africa, I do some supervision of the workers when I'm at home. I check on their reports and make sure everything is going smoothly, make sure their reports are coming in, and as they're sending reports in, that the funds are being dispersed appropriately. And my role is just to answer questions and to do some dreaming and trying to figure out ideas. One of the big challenges, my work in this part of Africa is with deaf people. And the people that's a whole new population for me. And while they're different in every country, and their sign language is a bit different and everything, still the needs are very similar. And one of the big challenges with deaf people is they face a fair bit of prejudice, and people think because they can't hear, they must be stupid, or they must be, something else is wrong with them. And many times the only problem is they can't hear. And if people give them a chance, they can do amazing things. But they face prejudice, they have trouble getting work, finding employment, so they're struggling financially. And there's family issues, and many difficulties come up, but God works, and God loves us all. And Pastor Mwasia from Kenya, one of his favorite verses talks about how the deaf will hear, and the blind will see, and the lame will leap. And it's just a reminder, as he says, that your condition is not permanent. Your condition is temporary. And that's such good news, to know that the time is coming when we will all see, and we will all hear, and we will all walk, and everything will be restored. And I just long for that day.
Pastor Nisner, I'm interested when you talk about the deaf people. How do you ensure that their needs are met? Or is it the workers that would... what help do you deliver to the deaf? I'm interested.
What helped me?
Yes. How do you work with the deaf society?
Well, I have to have a translator, an interpreter with me, obviously, because I don't do sign language. So I have somebody that can interpret, and then I do my best to hear what they're saying and ask questions where I don't understand to get the most information I possibly can, so that I can have a good understanding of what their needs are.
Thank you. And why only the deaf? When we have the blind, when we have those with the diseases like albinism,
Yeah.
when we have the lame, when we have so many disabilities, why did you pick on the deaf only?
That's a fair question. And I guess I didn't really make this choice. That was chosen before I came into the picture.
Okay.
We had a gentleman here by the name of John Blake, and he started up the work among the deaf. And he had a son. He was a speaking man, and he could hear, but he had a son who was deaf. And so he learned sign language in Canada where he was. And he had a real work among the deaf people there. And then somehow he got connected with gospel outreach and started making trips to Africa to improve the work among the deaf in this part of the world. And that was his focus. One thing I would say in answer to your question, gospel outreach is trying to get the message of Jesus to unreached people groups. And blind people can still hear, and they can hear the message of Jesus. And there's prejudice against them, but it's different. And people who are lame, who have other struggles, they have challenges, but they can still hear the Word of God. Deaf people, they look very normal. They look like every one of us. They look like each one of us, and we don't know the difference, except that occasionally they, when we finally realize they can't hear. And the only way they'll be able to hear the Word of God is if somebody is trained as an interpreter to share with them.
Well, thank you so much. I've heard your point on the deaf. But how would you ensure that your goals as gospel outreach are aligned with the policy of the Seventh-day Adventist Church?
We rely largely on the local organizations that we partner with to ensure that. They do most of the research on the individual to make recommendations for who is going to be supported by gospel outreach. And so we trust that they are finding good people that have a good background and strong commitment to the Lord and His Word.
Thank you. Do you assist only gospel workers, or you also deal with individuals who are deaf? Or?
We help, I think as an organization, our main focus is on raising funds for stipends for gospel outreach workers. On an individual basis, probably each person that goes out helps people in various ways with various funds that they have available. I know for me, right now I'm working on raising some money for a young man who is not a gospel outreach worker, but who I met, who is, the doctors have told him that if he gets some hearing aids, that he may be able to restore some of his hearing. Well, that's exciting to me. And it's not inexpensive, but I think I can raise the money to help him get the hearing aids he needs. And so that's one of the things I'll be working on.
I think I can get some money to give him the hearing aid that he needs. I like that point. You're a pastor, and what is your perspective of faith and works in your gospel outreach ministry? What is your impression or perspective of faith and the works? It seems like gospel outreach is getting that combination.
Yeah, there's the book of James, the Apostle James, he talks a lot about that, and Paul as well, and how faith is so important. And obviously we are saved by faith. We are sanctified by faith. We are, God is at work in us through faith. That's how He accomplishes His work. But we know that when God works in us, it changes us, and we're not the same. And what we do and how we live is different as a result of God's being alive in us. The Apostle Paul talks about us being a new creation. We are different. We're not the same. And when God makes a new creation, things are different.
Thank you so much. Do you think you're making an impact?
Oh, I know we're making an impact, Gospel Outreaches, as a big organization. In the country of India, a huge percentage, at least was 75% of the baptisms one year recently were from gospel outreach workers. And they're just a small percentage of the workers and pastors in that area. And yet they're making a huge impact as far as bringing people to Jesus. These are frontline Bible workers, people working on the front lines, meeting people in their individual homes, meeting them in their places of work, attending to their needs. These are people that have their feet are dirty, their hands are dirty because they're involved in people's lives and they're giving their all for Jesus and for the people that he died for.
How do you make sure that you evaluate your works?
Evaluate our works?
Since you are saying you make an impact, how do you assess?
Oh,
How do you
there's
assess
various ways.
success?
Yeah, you see how many churches are being raised up, how many people are being baptized, how many lives are being changed. I think about the work we were doing when I was in Southeast Asia a couple of years ago. And I see that school there where we assisted at. And the enrollment in that school has increased dramatically since we were there. And so by having gospel outreach there, we're able to help support them, and they're able to accomplish things that they couldn't do if they didn't have our support. I look at the schools, I think of a couple of years ago, we visited a school up in Papua, Indonesia. On the island there, we had to get there by airplane. Private plane took us in there. And just the young people there, the volunteers there were doing a great work. And the children, the lives of the local villagers there were coming from miles around. Many of the children would walk for hours to get to school, to learn for a few hours, and then they would walk back home. God is at work, and they're changing lives. And the villages the village is different as a result of people being there that are speaking for the Lord.
I think you share with us one of your touching stories of the places you've visited. You've mentioned Asia so much. I'm sure Africa will be next.
Yeah.
But share with me any experience anywhere that was so touching.
2 years ago, I went to Southeast Asia, and we visited Thailand. There's a school that was started by one family, and just a small family, and they didn't have huge funds or huge resources. But shortly after they got to that place and started the school, there was some more rebel activity in Myanmar, which is just across the border. The school itself is maybe 500 meters from the border. There's just a small river that runs between Myanmar and Thailand there. And on Thailand's side of the border, they're safe, but on the Myanmar side, they're liable to be bombed or attacked by the enemy forces. And while we were there, we were able to, we took a little canoe across the river, and then we drove up to a couple more schools that we're supporting in Myanmar and saw the work that they're doing there. And it was just exciting to see what God is doing. We were able to visit the local headman of one of the villages there, and he's not a believer by any stretch, but he so much appreciates the work that we're doing to help support a school there for the children of his village. He wants the children of his village to have an education, and we're helping to support that, and that's exciting.
As you talk about Myanmar, and I know what has been happening there. Some people refer to it as ethnic cleansing, others it's civil strife, and so many things happening in there. How was it like when you were crossing the river that separates Thailand and Myanmar?
They're very careful with us. We're Americans, and so they want to be sure it's safe when we go across. And there's not an official border crossing. Official checkpoint. We didn't get our passport stamped or anything, but they said, it's safe to go across. We went across, and the soldiers kind of let you on through, and there's just a basic understanding there. There was no problem there. Although my friend who I went with 2 years ago, he's back there this year, and they weren't able to cross because there was the rebel activity was quite close to the border there. And so that didn't work out for them this year. So we just have to listen to what our partners say and do what they suggest there.
How do you balance physical emotion and spiritual well-being in such situations? How do you balance the two, where you have physical emotions and also you have to maintain your spiritual welfare here and there?
I think it's fair to say that Jesus was the perfect example of that, and I think we all seek to follow his example, and we don't do a very good job of that. But Jesus was always aware of his needs, and the time came when he said to his disciples, you know, we need to come apart by ourselves and rest for a bit. And yet, even when they said that, when they got to the shore, there were all those people waiting to see them, and Jesus went and met their needs. And then we find after he had fed the 5,000 men that afternoon, that evening, and plus the women and children, and he sent the people away, he went up to the mountain himself to pray. And that's where he renewed his strength. And prayer is a huge part of how you can maintain your connection with God. And then for me, I like to run on a fairly regular basis for exercise.
Running,
yeah.
how many kilometers?
Well, a couple days ago I ran 13 kilometers. So
13?
yeah, we were in, where was I in? Tanzania, I guess it was, Dar es Salaam. And it's very flat there. That makes it very easy. So we had a good time there. But no, I like to run regularly, several times a week, and that helps keep me balanced. It also helps me to get plenty of rest at night, and that's good. And I try to eat balanced meals and I'm always careful of my water intake to get plenty of good water. And I just want to take care of myself. And I find when I'm well rested, I'm much better able to do everything else, and life is so much easier. When I'm short on sleep, life is difficult.
Thank you. I would like to hear more about the 12 students that were studied at a school in Thailand. You mentioned as we were crossing the river between Myanmar and Thailand, there was a family that had started a small school, and there were just about 12 or so students. I would like to hear more about their progress.
The family there is just I think there were 3 girls in that family and a son, and the lady actually is from Sweden, and she became a Christian in Sweden and then came to America, got married and came to America. I don't remember the exact story, but divorced her husband, and then her next husband, a good Christian man, but he passed away from a cancer that got him. And then she found one other man that took her and her 4 children, and he married them, and he's a quiet man, but he's a strong man. And he and her realized they wanted their family to have an experience in the mission field before the children left home. And so they were originally planning to go to India, but for various reasons that didn't work out, and they had this opportunity in Thailand. And they went, and shortly after they got there, their daughter went across the border into Myanmar and was teaching there. And then she called them and said the bombing, one day she called them and said there was some bombing going on. She could hear it. And then I think it was the next day she called, and the bombing was much closer. And so she came down to the border and crossed, and there were a bunch of other people from Myanmar that came across the border, and that family just kept taking them in and doing their best to support them and help them out. And they've built a school, and they've raised money from various places and got funding, and they've got a school of over 600 children there now, and many of them are boarding students. They live in dormitories there. It's an amazing operation they have, and just a very loving family and a caring. The wife, we didn't meet the husband when we were there. He was back in America on some business, but we had a good visit with her and her family. She's got one daughter there, a young lady, a very young lady, not a trained accountant, but she's doing the accounting at the school and doing she's the admissions counselor and the academic dean, and she does everything else for that school when it comes to what's going on with the finances and the enrollment, but just does a great job with that.
From Asia, we bring it back to Zambia.
Okay.
Have you yet identified the beneficiaries or what works you do in Zambia to ensure that also gospel outreach is felt here in Zambia?
Yes, Gospel Outreach has been connected with Zambia here for a number of years, since 2017 or 18, I think. So it's been quite a while. But for some reason, something happened here, and there's a breakdown in the communication between Gospel Outreach and Zambia. And I still don't know exactly what happened. So what I'm doing here is we have a very good man in the field here, but he has been working for the last several years without any stipends, just as a volunteer. And he's continuing to work, continuing to bring people to Jesus and to bring people and to teach people, and he's teaching sign language classes and raising up groups. But I want to do everything I can here to ensure that we get the stipends coming again so that he can get his stipend, and that work is able to move forward here. And then of course we're always looking for new places to start up work, to begin work in new areas. We have some work here in Lusaka. We would like to see work in other centers around the country. Zambia is a big country. I was amazed when I got here, and when I looked and saw how big it is. Yeah, it's a big country, and there's great needs here. So.
Yeah, if you want to know how big it is, it's about 752,614 kilometers squared.
Okay.
Yeah, of course, with the rivers, lakes,
Yeah.
water bodies that are there. But that's our surface area, quite big.
Yeah.
In which town, in case there is a viewer out there listening to our program and they are interested to become a gospel worker, run us through the process. What should they do? Do they need to get in touch, or what do they need to do? What do they need to follow?
Well, right now, we're recruiting gospel outreach workers in Zambia to work among the deaf people. So we would be obviously looking for somebody that knows sign language. Where gospel outreach is looking for people that have at least a high school education. We want people that can communicate with people in their local language. We want somebody that's been a believer in Jesus for at least a year or so, you know, to have some grounding in the Word of God. And we want somebody that's committed to reaching other people, telling other people about Jesus. Somebody that has a story to tell. What would they do if they wanted to become a gospel outreach worker? Probably the best thing I could suggest is just begin working hard and bringing people to Jesus where you are, and then your pastor can find out and learn what you're doing, and the conference president there can find out what you're doing, and pretty soon word will get out that this person is a good person, you know, that needs to be taken on, and gospel outreach should look at them, and that's how it would work. So yeah, just bringing people to Jesus. And if you know sign language and you raise up a group of people in your local church, obviously gospel outreach can be very interested in that kind of, you know, somebody that can do that kind of work.
In case you haven't heard, dear viewer, I urge you to like the Facebook page for Hope Channel Zambia. But the message here being expressed is that gospel outreach is still looking for committed workers. You should have a high school qualification, and you should also know sign language. I believe you are there seated. So many classes going on almost at each and every church in Lusaka or in Zambia. They have a sign language center. So gospel outreach is still looking for people who are committed. Do they need to be pastors?
No, we
Do
don't.
they need to have diplomas?
A high school education.
High school education.
Yeah,
Do they need to have a degree? Or
They don't need a university degree, no. In fact, we're not looking for people with university degrees. Many times we find that people with high school education, they know other people, they know how to contact people, they know how to talk to people about Jesus. They don't have any theological training, but they know about loving Jesus.
Your qualification, your passport is this. Allow me to try sign language. How? You. Me, I'm okay. That's all you need, sign language. So get in touch with us on Hope Channel Zambia, and then we will lead you to where it's happening. Continue talking about your works or any other thing that you feel will help.
Other things that we're involved with?
Yes.
Okay. There's gospel outreach is involved with a lot of things around the world, and every fall we have a rally where gospel outreach brings regional directors with many stories to tell from their part of the world. And so I've heard some great stories from other parts of Africa, the Middle East, the Far East, Asia, India. Obviously, they have a lot of work going on there. Trying to think of individual stories of how God has changed people's lives. But when God comes into villages and changes villages, it's amazing what can happen.
I'm interested in knowing the next rally. Where will it be and when?
The next rally, I don't have the dates on the tip of my tongue, but it should be the last, maybe the last Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of September, something like that.
Every September, there's a rally somewhere, but you need to do the works. You need to go and share testimonies, or you need to have stories that you can send through the pastor. What would be your word of encouragement to the would-be workers that might fall under your jurisdiction, or that might be interested in joining gospel workers?
Yeah, I always encourage people to, we're not trying to force anybody or trying to twist anybody's arm or to make them do something they don't want to do. But if you have a love for the Lord, and if you want to see Him at work through you to reach other people for Jesus, think about joining gospel outreach. Think about making yourself available. It's a commitment. There are responsibilities. At Gospel Outreach, we raise money. The main way we go about raising money is we tell stories. We send people stories about what our workers are doing every month. And they read those stories and they get inspired. And they say, we like what Gospel Outreach is doing with our money. And so they send us more money. And so we need to get more stories from the field of what people are doing and how God is working in their lives. And it's exciting.
We need to get stories and how people are living in other parts of the world. Share with us your own story, the family. Share with us.
Yes, I'm very blessed. I have a wife, a beautiful wife, married her many years ago, and we had 3 beautiful children and had a very good life together. I was a pastor for many years and have done some other things as well. And my wife and I had been married almost 41 years, well over 40 years, and my wife got cancer and she passed away back in 2020. And it's been almost 5 years now, and it was very difficult for me for a while. For the first couple of years were very difficult. But then I realized that my wife had passed away, and my children had lost their mother, my grandchildren had lost their grandmother, but I was still there, and I'm very much alive. And so I realized God had a work for me to do, and it wasn't time for me to roll over and quit, or to quit working for Him, or to lose faith in God. And so I'm continuing to move forward, which I know is what my wife would want. She wouldn't want me to stop living just because she's gone. And so her faith continues to inspire me. She was a very godly woman, and I have complete confidence that I will see her again someday when the good Lord comes back to take us home.
I will see her again someday. Amen. When the Lord comes to take us again.
Amen.
How do you find courage to talk to others when you yourself have gone through such an experience? You lost your wife 5 years ago, and again you're a gospel worker trying to give hope to people. How do you find courage?
One thing I know is, well, Jesus promised a few things when He was here. And one of the things He promised, He says, in this world you will have tribulation. And we as believers, we often try to sidestep that, or we soft pedal that, or we make it as if it's not really true, but it's very much one of Jesus' announcements of reality. We live in a world that's tough. We live as sheep in the midst of wolves. Well, sheep, when we're a single sheep or we're in a group of sheep and there's wolves all around, it's difficult. Life is not easy, and we forget that life is tough. And it's tough, and often sometimes the most difficult thing is that we don't understand what's going on. But even though we don't understand, we can have faith that there is a God. And we look in the Bible at stories like Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego as they're getting ready, as the king is telling them they have to bow down to that image or he's going to throw them into the fiery furnace. He said, they said to him, "Oh, king, we don't need more time. Our minds are made up. We serve a God and he is able to deliver us from that fiery furnace. But if he doesn't, we are still not going to bow down." And we need that kind of confidence in God. We don't understand. We believe that he can save us from these difficult times. But we also live in a very real world, and we know that many times he doesn't save us, and we go through hard times. And even though we don't understand, we can still trust that he has our best interest at his heart.
Thank you so much. That was quite touching. And your closing remarks on building bridges of hope and the role of gospel outreach worker.
Yes, we have, each one of us has opportunities. We have people that we know. We have people that we connect with and people that we interact with, that we have an opportunity to get to know better and to be real with them and to be honest with them and to not be pushy or not to be forceful, but to be just loving examples of Jesus when he was here, of how he interacted with people. And we don't find Jesus ever forcing anybody or trying to do anything to coerce them in any way. But Jesus continued to hold out enticements for people to come to him. And he just drew people. And he says in his word, he says, if I be lifted up, I will draw all people to me. That's what he wants. That he wants us to draw people to him. Not to force them, not to make them in any way, but just to, by the force and the power of our lives, by the example that we live, to encourage people to find out about this Jesus that changes everything.
Thank you so much, viewers. We have come to the end of the program. Thank you for listening. Join me next time on this Building Bridges of Hope. On behalf of the director, Dr. Chiwena Kabanje, and also on my own behalf, and also the team behind Hope Channel Zambia. For now, it's bye-bye. Thank you so much.